History offers countless examples of predictions that seemed unbelievable at first glance. Yet, once the surface is peeled back and the deeper layers are revealed, they expose the fortune teller and render him entirely untrustworthy. One such incident is the verses in the Qur'an's Surah number 30, Al-Rom, which speak of the Romans' defeat and their future victory. For believers, these lines are a striking sign of divine foresight. For critics, they raise basic questions about timing, memory, and the complex and objectionable ways sacred texts take shape. This passage sits right at the crossroads of belief and historical scrutiny. Surah 30, Al-Rom, verses 2-4, tell us that the Romans, the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantines, were defeated in a nearby land, yet within a few years they will be victorious. The verse concludes, "On that day, the believers will rejoice." Traditionally, Muslims have connected this directly to real events. Between year 615 and year 620 CE, the Byzantines suffered devastating losses to the Sasanian Persian Empire. But by year 627 CE, under Emperor Heraclius, they made a dramatic comeback that changed the course of the war. So what do we make of these verses? Are they a divine revelation foretelling a future only God could have known, or a narrative shaped, perhaps unintentionally, by the very community that preserved it? As Qur'an was formalized in about year 652 BCE, about 20 years after the Persians were defeated by Romans, many believers see the fulfillment of this prophecy as clear evidence of revelation. Yet questions about timing, oral transmission, and historical memory continue to linger. The Qur'an was recited during the Prophet Muhammad's lifetime, but it wasn't compiled into a standardized written text until the era of Caliph Uthman, nearly 2 decades after the Roman-Persian conflict had ended. That timing invites a crucial question. Did these verses genuinely predict the Roman victory, or were they remembered and preserved in a way that aligned them with events people already knew had occurred? This isn't an accusation, it's a historical inquiry. Like all orally transmitted traditions, the early Quranic recitations existed for years in human memory before they existed on the page. Qur'an remains in the memory and in oral discussion with followers from year 632, the demise of Prophet Muhammad, till the year 632. These 20 turbulent years, Islamic history was marked by internal disputes, wars with the Persian and Roman empires, countless administrative challenges, and the tragic deaths of many followers of Prophet Muhammad, the very individuals who served as the primary carriers of the Qur'an's oral tradition. And oral traditions, no matter how valued, are vulnerable to shifts in emphasis, reinterpretations, and subtle harmonization with familiar historical events. If the Roman comeback was already celebrated among early Muslims in 528 BCE, could that shared excitement have shaped how the prophecy was recalled? Historians studying ancient cultures encounter this pattern often. Stories often evolve to preserve meaning rather than strict chronology. Over the 22 years of oral transmission, the Qur'an was remembered in fragments by different followers. This long span provided ample opportunity for individuals, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to add lines that ultimately became part of the final text. Another difficulty lies in the nature of the prophecy itself. If the intention of this prophecy was to demonstrate divine knowledge, why focus on a short-term military reversal, something that could easily be dismissed as coincidence or the natural ebb and flow of a long conflict? An event which happened 4 years before the death of Prophet Muhammad. As defeat to Persian happened in 628 BCE, and Prophet Muhammad's death in 632 BCE. This prophecy does not stand to be called a prophecy in any sense of chronological facts. Now let's look at it logically, and why this so-called prophecy was framed in a broad, flexible period, like within a few years. Throughout history, people have tended to interpret vague predictions in ways that reinforce what they already believe. This tendency isn't unique to religion. It's simply part of being human. So the crucial question becomes, Is this a genuine miracle, or an example of what scholars call ex eventu prophecy, a prediction formulated or shaped after the event it describes? Many ancient cultures produce such retroactive prophecies to reinforce legitimacy or strengthen communal identity. And if we take this line of thought seriously, it opens the door to far more uncomfortable possibilities. If this celebrated prophecy may partly reflect hindsight, what does that imply about the Qur'an's earliest formation? Could other passages have been affected, intentionally or unintentionally, by addition, refinement, or selective remembrance before the text reached its final written form? Could certain details have shifted, even subtly, as decades passed and the needs and beliefs of the growing Muslim community evolved? From a traditional Islamic perspective, however, the power of these verses lies in the fact that they contradicted all expectations of the time. The Byzantines looked finished. Their empire was collapsing. Predicting a comeback under those conditions would have seemed irrational. For believers, the prophecy's boldness is precisely what makes it miraculous, and its fulfillment ties early Muslims to a larger narrative of monotheistic resilience and divine justice. But historical facts tells another story, as the main so-called prophecy of Persian defeat happened when Prophet was alive and were dictating Quranic verses. Secondly, that the Qur'an's final compilation came after the events it describes. Thirdly, that oral transmission is inherently difficult to verify. Fourthly, that geopolitical reversals are common in hindsight. And lastly, that the verses themselves are broad enough to fit multiple interpretations. The question is, if Allah, the All-Knowing, sought to give indisputable proof of divine foreknowledge, why not offer a prophecy so specific and long-term that no later adjustment or reinterpretation would be possible? And that cannot be disputed given the historical established facts. This question isn't about attacking faith, it's about examining how texts, and the beliefs around them, develop alongside human memory and political reality. So we return to the central question. What exactly is Surah number 30 Al-Rum showing us? A divine message? A community's evolving memory? The verses about the Romans don't just invite us to revisit history, they push us to consider how belief shapes history, and how history in turn shapes belief. These questions don't prove alteration, but they do highlight the reality that the Qur'an, like all ancient texts, passed through human voices and human recollection long before it became a fixed written scripture. And that raises a challenging thought for believers. If even one verse might reveal the influence of historical memory rather than pure revelation, how certain can we be that no other verses underwent similar shifts, whether through omission, refinement, or unintended adjustment? Ultimately, this debate is about far more than a single prophecy. It opens a doorway into a deeper, more complex examination, one that touches the foundations of how sacred text of Qur'an emerged, how Muslim followers preserved them, and how interpretations solidify over time and in its final shape. Please subscribe and provide comments. For similar thoughts, please read book, Objective Analysis of God.
In the beginning, a divine creator shaped the cosmos from the void, but from humanity's sacred texts, another power arose, challenging this solitary reign. A celestial standoff for creation began.